Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels have been designated a foreign terrorist organization by the United States. The move will impose or reimpose sanctions on targets and takes effect next week, a day before Joe Biden assumes the presidency. For more on this story, we can bring in Natasha Lindstedt, professor in the Department of Government at the University of Essex. Thank you very much for joining us here on France 24. What will this designation change in reality on the ground over in Yemen, a country which is the world's worst humanitarian crisis?
I think really the only effect is going to be quite negative. In some ways, it's symbolic because the Houthis pose no danger to the U.S., but the timing of this is somewhat suspicious. It's happening at the very end of Trump's administration. It's going to make it very, very difficult for Joe Biden's new administration to try to work with Iran. Biden was hoping to achieve some sort of détente with Iran, and because Iran is a patron of the Houthis, by having this organization, the Houthis, designated as a terrorist organization, that's really going to make that type of any type of détente much more difficult. But I think the bigger issue, which you already spoke about, was the humanitarian impact. When you designate an organization as a terrorist organization, this is going to make it much more difficult for humanitarian groups to try to offer humanitarian aid in that area that is controlled by the Houthis, and the Houthis control a large area. In addition to Sana'a, they also control the port of Hudaida, where most of the humanitarian aid arrives at. So this is really only going to worsen things, and at a time when it's really crucial. We know that 80% of the country is in need of humanitarian aid, so we're talking about millions of people that need greater support. So this doesn't help matters in any way.
Can the incoming administration just remove the designation with regards to the Houthi rebels? Because, as you said, they want to keep those humanitarian aid channels alive, as well as keep talks with Iran on the horizon.
They can, but this process sometimes is slower than you think. And also, it's just starting the Biden administration off on the wrong footing. And that's why some of the efforts of the Trump administration in the very late days have been really to undermine Biden in its relationship with Iran. So this move puts Biden more into a corner in the way that he wants to deal with Iran, because, as I've said before, he's trying to go back to the nuclear deal, and creating a bigger rift is going to make it much more difficult for Iran to be willing to come back to the table.
And this clearly is a move that Saudi Arabia will be happy with. Where are we in terms of, bringing about a peaceful solution to this conflict in Yemen that has stretched on years and gone from one catastrophe to another?
I think we're really far away from any kind of agreement, and it's looking more and more like Yemen being in a protracted state of low intensity and sometimes high intensity conflict with really two governments. And as we know in the history, Yemen was divided. There were North and South Yemen, but that's what it's really looking more like, because the Houthis really have de facto control over its part, and then the government, only really with the Saudi help, is able to control its part. And so a bigger issue also is that you have an internationalization of the conflict, and that's going to make these conflicts last that much longer. But it will really take international efforts to stay out of it, and they may have to decide that they may just need to be two Yemens.
We'll see how it plays out. Natasha Lindstedt, thank you very much for joining us on the program today.